Good afternoon, folks. My name is Jim Aspel. I'm a board-certified workers' compensation attorney in Farmington, Connecticut. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit today about why it's more complicated to settle a claim, a workers' compensation claim, when you're on Social Security disability. Now, as part of our practice, in addition to workers' compensation law, we also do quite a bit of Social Security disability. We've been doing that for over 30 years. And the complicating factor with Social Security disability is not on the Social Security end so much, but on the Medicare end. If you are accepted or approved for Social Security disability, one of the benefits that you get is Medicare. And Medicare is a federal health insurance program that's going to pay for your medical treatment, typically for your disability-related issues, but also any other general health problems that you have as well. The problem arises if you're trying to settle a workers' compensation case, and the problem is that as a function of that workers' compensation claim, you've sustained an injury and you're getting medical treatment for that injury. Doesn't matter whether it's a torn meniscus in your knee or a herniated disc in your back or your neck or a rotator cuff in your shoulder. The workers' compensation carrier in most cases is paying for some sort of medical treatment for you. Frequently they pay for surgery, they're paying for physical therapy, they pay for prescription expenses, they pay for all sorts of things. And the general rule of thumb to keep in mind is that Medicare, as a federal agency, can never be put in a position where they have to pay an expense that would be the responsibility of a workers' compensation insurance company. So in other words, Medicare is not going to pay any medical expenses associated with a work-related injury. Now, if you have kidney disease or diabetes or something else concurrently with your work injury, that's not a problem. Medicare is going to pay for that without any problem. It's only if you have, for example, a shoulder injury that's being treated under workers' comp, and then you go to the doctor and you try to get that paid for by Medicare, that you're going to have a problem. And if by some fluke Medicare accidentally pays for that surgery and suddenly they figure out that, hey, this was the part of a workers' compensation case, they're going to come back to you or your attorney or the workers' compensation insurance company to try to get that money back. So it's not a good time for anybody at all. So how do we work around that? There's a couple of things we can do. First of all, if you have a relatively straightforward or low value workers' compensation case, there's a provision where if the case settles for under $25,000, we can do what's called a self-administered Medicare set-aside. So typically say you have a low value workers' compensation case, and what we're going to do is we're going to settle it for $24,500. Out of that $24,500, we allocate a certain amount of money. We use our best estimate and put on our thinking caps and say we decide, okay, we're going to allocate $7,500 to the self-administered Medicare set-aside in the settlement documents. So when the case settles, you're still going to get paid the $24,500 plus the attorney's fee. You're going to get all of that money, but allocated in that settlement money is the $7,500 that you're theoretically going to use for your future medical care. The reason being that way you've taken Medicare's interest into consideration, which is what the federal law requires you to do, and you have a pot of money set aside to pay for the medical expense for the work-related injury. So that's a simple way of doing it. If you have a straightforward, lower value workers' compensation case, we do it all the time where we settle the case for $24,500. We put in the self-administered MSA with a reasonable allocation for medical care, and that works out just fine. There are oftentimes cases where the workers' compensation case has more value. So in other words, it's worth more than $25,000. In that instance, we have to get a professional Medicare set-aside arrangement taken care of. Generally, the workers' compensation insurance company has vendors that they use that are going to evaluate what the cost of your future medical care are going to be. They take a look at all of your medical records. They analyze those and they come up with a dollar amount. So say it's $23,000 is allocated for future medical care, or it's $79,000, whatever it happens to be, whatever the vendor comes up with, that's what they've determined based upon their experience in handling these cases in the past. This is what we can reasonably expect that Medicare would have to pay for the workers' compensation related medical treatment. once we have that number, the insurance company sends it off to Medicare, typically up in Boston, and they will approve it. They will sign off on the Medicare set-aside arrangement, and they'll say, yeah, we're willing to live with this number. Now, in that instance, we draft the settlement paperwork, we attach to it the Medicare set-aside arrangement that's been professionally prepared, and we recite in the body of the settlement document, the stipulation, how much is being allocated for the MSA. Again, when the case settles and the funds are paid out, you're going to get the full amount of the settlement. There's a few exceptions, but for the sake of this video, assume you're going to get all of the money. So if the case settles for $250,000, you're going to get $200,000. So there's a 20% attorney's fee, $50,000 goes to your attorney, you get $200,000 tax-free. Out of that $200,000, whatever the MSA number, say it's $75,000, that's allocated for future medical care for you. And the way it works is you have to account for those dollars. You can spend them, but typically the law is expecting that you're going to be spending that on medical treatment related to the work injury. You're expected to maintain receipts. You're expected to keep track of what you've spent on the work-related injury treatment. And if Medicare ever comes knocking and they ask, well, why is it you're now claiming that you've blown through the $75,000 MSA and you want us to treat you? You have a box full of receipts, or you have some sort of backup documentation to say, here, I did in fact pay this much money to Dr. Jones, I paid this much for physical therapy, I paid this much for prescriptions, and now Medicare, you're on the hook to take over my medical treatment. So, that's typically how it goes. It sounds like it's a burdensome thing on you, and quite honestly it is. There are a number of vendors out there, Amitros is one that I can think of off the top of my head, where they will actually manage a Medicare set-aside for you. In that instance, they will actually be the custodian of your money, so they will get it. They'll hold it in a bank account, essentially, for your benefit. You're going to get, typically it's going to look like a health insurance card for your purposes, and you're going to use that anytime that you get medical treatment related to the work injury. Then the settlement company is going to keep a running tabulation of what it is you've spent, how much is left in the MSA, et cetera, and it takes that headache off your hands. Now, there's nothing to stop you from going out there and taking the full value of your settlement. And the example I used, I think it was $200,000. You've suddenly got burning a hole in your pocket. There's nothing to stop you realistically from going down to Foxwood and putting it all on black, as it were. You can spend that however you want. The only caveat is that if you do that and then you attempt to have Medicare pay for any sort of treatment related to the work injury, they're going to say no go. They will not cover it. They say, remember that MSA that we approved way back when? That's the money you're supposed to use out of your own pocket to pay for your medical treatment. So you can understand why these Medicare scenarios, they create a bit of a headache for you. They create a bit of a headache for the lawyer, and it's something that we have to work around. We do them all the time, and it's certainly not impossible, but it is something that you need to really be aware of. Your lawyer really needs to be aware of, and typically you want to make sure that you're dealing with a workers' compensation attorney that has a very good handle on the role that Medicare is going to play in your workers' compensation settlement. That's going to be the case if you're on Medicare because of old age. It's going to be the case if you're on Medicare because of Social Security disability. It's going to be the case if you're on Medicare for any reason whatsoever. End-stage kidney disease was the other one I was trying to think of. The other thing I just want to throw out there is the other complicating factor with these Social Security disability cases when you're trying to settle a workers' comp claim from the same fact pattern is that Social Security, the disability end of it, if they get wind of the fact that you've settled a workers' compensation claim, and in my instance you've got $200,000 suddenly flying around in your bank account, they're going to be looking to offset that against their monthly benefit check that they send to you. So in addition to the Medicare set-aside arrangement, your workers' compensation attorney is going to have to come up with an offset calculation so that we can properly allocate the dollars in your settlement so that when you do get approved for Social Security disability, or alternatively if you're already on it, the workers' compensation settlement and its large cash influx to you is going to have minimal impact on your Social Security disability benefits. So again, the takeaway is this is complicated stuff, folks, and it's really not for the faint of heart. If you're on Medicare, you're on Social Security disability, or you're contemplating applying for Social Security disability, make sure that you talk to an experienced workers' comp attorney before settling your workers' compensation case to avoid any kind of problems. If you have any particular questions, feel free to give us a call. We're in Farmington, 860-523-8783. You can visit our website, www.aspelaw.com. If you found the video helpful, please feel free to give us a thumbs up. You can subscribe to the video. We do drop workers' compensation content periodically to keep you up to date on Connecticut workers' compensation law developments. And hope you have a nice afternoon, and hope you found the video helpful. Thank you.